Alrighty, how are we doing this evening? Welcome to the Outer Rim. I am Carbonite. With me, as always, is Ray Star. Ray, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, how are you, Carbonate?
Coming at you, episode number. I think we're at 3 already. I can't.
Three?
I lost count. I lost count.
3 plus a special.
Yeah, exactly. So, tonight we have a sort of we're going back in time. We're gonna go way back in time and talk about the original, the very first Star Wars set ever released. 1977 Topps Star Wars movie photo cards bubblegum series. Series 1. Ray, you were not alive when this was released.
I
Was not
believe you
alive
were not alive either, but
when
I
this
mean,
was
bubblegum.
released. I am liking that 15 cents a pack price tag based on what we just paid for the 24 Galaxy Chrome boxes, but but yeah, this is it. This is the original. The movie comes out in May, late May, and in June, this set comes out the very next month. And I guess a risk. I don't know. By Topps, a sort of like. It's just I think it's very interesting that they would release this sight unseen. I mean, maybe they'd seen the movie and go, "Wow, this is really good." Maybe Lucas threw a little scratch their way and said, "Hey, I'll give you a cheap licensing deal to release this." But I mean, less than a month after the movie comes out, they have these in stores. What do you think, Ray?
Well, I actually have nothing really to compare it to. I don't know how common it was for Tops to do something like this, but I would imagine, nowadays almost everything gets made into a top series. You get Stranger Things and, all these movie franchises. But I would imagine this was probably sort of an outlier for them back in 77, which, either they were really forward thinking and very smart to jump on it, or like you say, George Lucas kind of got a little deal with them. I think it's awesome, and I love that bubblegum was included, and I love the cover of this box. So
well, I was about to comment on that right now, and this was designed to sell. It is
yeah.
almost the antithesis of every character in the movie. You have dainty, feminine, beautiful Leia, right? Just I mean, she's got a gun, but look at the flowy dress, right? And then you got Beefcake Luke with the lightsaber, with kind of the
power pose. He's almost like one of those Thundercats or something. It's very
Yeah, and it's like, it's like this shirt rippling out, and you don't see Han Solo at all, which is interesting, right? You do see C-3PO and R2-D2 just kind of hanging out, but it's like robots, future, yay, let's go, right? I love it. It's perfect. It's the 70s. It's it's the first ever one they had to get people in, right? A lot of people had seen the movie, but a lot of people hadn't. Star Wars, what's this? So I love it. So 140 card base set, and that's it. In a piece of bubble
some
gum.
right,
That's
and some stickers, right? No real
sure.
chases other than stickers.
Right. But I
Which
tell you what,
thing
I
back
bet
then.
if you took off some layers of paint in some houses that were built pre 1977, right? You would see some kid who grew up, old kids room, and there would just be under those layers of paint and wallpaper, just the
Yeah,
stickers all on their wall because they used them. They didn't keep
yeah.
them. They didn't put them in card savers and send them to PSA. They kept these things and they used them. They put them in the spokes of their bike wheels. They threw them in a shoebox. They traded with their friends at recess. Whole different world. There's no
Well,
card
and
collecting necessarily, but
yeah,
yeah,
and I was gonna say let's get into that in some of the cards, because I think that's just it. These cards were used; they weren't
yep,
collected in the same way.
exactly. So and we all know, we've all seen it. If you're into Star Wars cards, you know this. This is Luke #1, the first card of the first set of Star Wars ever produced, which I find interesting because it's him in a stormtrooper outfit, right? It's that whole, I know it's a big, it's everybody knows in the movie, like, but if you're a kid hasn't seen the movie yet, you're opening this up, you get this card, you're like, oh, is Luke a stormtrooper? Was he part of the bad guys and then became a good guy? Like, I don't know. It's just, there's so many other Luke photos and pictures and scenes from the movie. I just think it's interesting that this is #1.
It's a very interesting choice because you think the iconic moment now, right, is him with the twin sons behind him, but this was so early that they probably didn't even know what was gonna be iconic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course, right? It's just throwing everything out there. But I mean, if you're into Star Wars cards, even if you're not into Star Wars cards in general, like you've probably seen this card somewhere. You know, if you're just a general Star Wars fan, and this card in any condition fetches some pretty hefty prices, especially anything above, anything graded above a 7 is buku bucks, and because again, first card ever produced, number one in the set. Um, I love it. I think if I try to cut this one out of my screen right now, I think that looks like a 10. That's probably a 10, right? Try to
The
just,
corners look pretty good.
yeah, corners look pretty sharp, not gonna lie. Photoshop does wonderful things.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about Star Wars, old school Star Wars, the rest of the show. Um, and I think it's interesting because you and I both grew up with the original trilogy, but we were born, pre-Jedi, Return of the Jedi, but post-Empire, right? We were right in that little
We
bubble.
did not see these in the theater.
Correct. Yeah,
So
correct. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look some headlines. All right. So this first headline. So we're gonna take a time machine back to 1977, the 70s, early 80s. It looks like look at some headlines from the era. Uh, and the first one is a movie review of A New Hope, and it's not a nice one. Stardust, right, is the title of this article. Um, I don't think this author was a fan of the franchise, of wasn't even a franchise back then, of the movie, of maybe wasn't even a science fiction fan, right? I don't know. Um, it's they use just the decapitated head of C3PO to get the point across, right? Um, and I just love the quote at the very top. We can't, I was able to read this article, but that quote at the top is encapsulates it perfectly. And it says Star Wars will do very nicely for those lucky enough to be children or unlucky enough never to have grown up.
So I read the whole article. What I loved about this article was how wrong it was in every single way. It's saying that there's this oh dull new world, right? That the future, as far as George Lucas is concerned, is going to be completely banal, completely boring. That it's a waste of time and money to have made this movie, and the author could not have been more wrong. That's what's just so wonderful about reading this article,
Yes.
is that clearly for millions of people, it's incredibly worth the time, the money. And I think we would all consider ourselves lucky enough to still be kids at heart who love this franchise and love everything about it. So
Well, yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. This is meant to be a dig. That all that machoism back in the 70s. Oh, got to be a real man, all this stuff. And it's like, grow up, kid. All these it was a different time and a different era, and I understand that.
yeah.
But if you told me like this movie's for kids or people who are kids at heart, I'd be like, oh, this is perfect. I really want to see this movie, right? It's meant as a dig, but it's actually a compliment, I feel like, because what does that mean? Oh, it means you have a sense of adventure. You have a great imagination. You can see a world bigger than yourself, and not only that, it just enraptures you, and you're just so in awe of the galaxy and all the characters and everything. Like, yeah, that sounds awesome. That's what I want to do. I don't want to watch a movie that is exactly like real life, right? I want to escape, and I want to feel like a kid again. That's what I want. So again, like, calling this movie dull is, I
Clearly, the author, right? The author is lacking in. It's perfect, right? It is lacking in imagination,
uh,
and just like you say, that kid at heart, which maybe at the time was you weren't supposed to be that, but for the rest of us who are able to enjoy and just sort of let go in that way, I think it's It says it all. So
Yeah.
yeah, I am unlucky enough to have not grown up, to never have grown up.
Exactly. Samesies. All right. So the next one, right? Next one, toy maker to Miss Holiday. So for those of you who don't remember, which probably most of you, as the story goes, Kenner, which is a toy company in Ohio, I think it's Cincinnati, um, put won the bid for Star Wars toys. Like they put it out and they said George Lucas gave them the license to make the figurines. And they said, "Great, this is going to be awesome. You know, we'll put out some Star Wars toys and we'll sell a few. We'll make a few bucks. This will be great." The movie comes out in late May. Um, we all know what happens. It becomes just a humongous hit. People seeing it 5, 10, 15 times. It is everywhere all at once, solidifying itself throughout American and world cultures, right? Of just being just awesome. I can't think of a better word than just awesome. And so that, I could just see them sitting in their boardroom. They're all probably smoking cigarettes. Remember, it was the late 70s, right? And they're just like, oh shit. So we're never going to be able to meet demand for these toys. And they recognize this early. They said, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
We're never gonna meet demand. So what do they do? I think this is kind of genius. And just the gall to even attempt this was so brazen. Was they sold IOUs. They literally said, well, we know we can get our first big shipment or big load, January, February. We're going to miss Christmas. So why don't we just sell them a piece of cardboard where they send in?
People will believe us.
Yeah, people, and they'll mail it in, and then we'll get all this information, and one by one, we will ship them the figures as they come in. And it worked. And they did it, and they finally caught up, and obviously they expanded production and things like that. But I just think I love this story. And because a small time toy maker, buys license for toys for one of the biggest movies of the decade, of the century, whatever. And yeah.
What I love about this too, because we're looking back on this in hindsight, right? But you have to imagine the anxiety, right? You might have thought this is going to be my only chance ever to get toys about this movie, right? And now here we are where we are just utterly saturated with Star Wars toys, socks, t-shirts, mugs, whatever, everywhere. But for the people in 1977, they might have thought this is literally my only chance to get this toy. So I have to get this IOU. So it's a brilliant piece of, headline to look back on, knowing what we know now.
Oh yeah. No, it's insane. And it says $9, got your 4 figures. Luke, Chewbacca, R2, and Leia. And the princess, right? Doesn't even call her Leia in the article, just the princess. And it said they was shipped in February or March, whatever. I don't know.
Maybe
tough.
Maybe
cookies,
you'll
kid.
get it for Easter.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows? But then I love it, and those early bird certificates and things I know are a huge collector's item now, because obviously everyone filled them out. Everyone filled them out and sent them in, and they used them. And again, they played with these toys. So just crazy. All right. And our third headline, Star Wars launches flood of TV spinoffs, right? You go up to any person on the street and say, hey, name one Star Wars spinoff in the 80s. You may or may not get an answer, right? You may
Other
or may not.
than the Christmas special.
Well, right. They might say the Christmas special, which counts kind of, but doesn't, right? And it's just interesting because they had Ewoks, right? They had the Christmas special, and no matter what they tried in the 80s, it bombed, right?
Yep.
It bombed. And I can imagine a lot of people read this article being like, yes, that's amazing. Oh my God, I can't wait for more Star Wars. And then
no.
It's just, yeah.
No.
It's like yeah.
Well, what I love about this, it's that everything old is new again. I feel like I could have read this headline 2 weeks ago.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right? And it
Yep.
actually says in the article, you probably can't read the fine print on the screen there, but I've heard of, 6 shows coming out, right? 6 projects in the works. Um, and then, like you say, okay, that didn't actually happen, but this is currently happening now. So
Yes.
I just love, it's like it was an article about what, 40 years before its time.
Yeah.
Maybe the author had a time capsule or something.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too, because like it just goes to show how difficult it was to spin off Star Wars, like that original trilogy, to spin off the Skywalker saga
Hmm.
was it was an uphill battle, right? It was impossible. Like you couldn't do it. People wanted the main characters. People wanted that thread, right? I think it wasn't just the characters, but the story
We
itself was
wanted
captivating.
Skywalker. Yeah.
They wanted the Skywalker saga, and so when you have this spin-off, right, of Ewoks. They were
Yes.
fine. But yeah, I just feel like people think, especially nowadays, they think, okay, the original trilogy came out and then the prequels. But that 16-year
There was a lot
span
of
between
time
Return
there.
of the Jedi, Phantom Menace, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of
Mhm.
comic books, a lot of video games, a lot of novels, just everything. And nothing really stuck. And obviously Disney's somewhat to blame because they made it Legends. They made the Legends universe and sort of said disregard all of that. Whatever we make now, that's what's canon.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah. So there you go. There's our headlines from 1977, early 80s. There you go.
Well, time
Uh,
machine, do we have a time machine? And back to the
we're
future
gonna
now.
we're gonna take a Simon Back to the Future, and we're gonna take a look at some cards from the Outer Rim. All right. So, first card from the set. Stormtroopers seek droids. Um and so Ray, you and I, we had a little conversation before we got going here tonight. So we took a look at this card. And for the life of us, we couldn't determine if dewbacks were actually in the original theatrical release of A New Hope. If you saw a dewback anywhere. I asked the AI, I Googled it, I tried all these different paths. I couldn't find a solid answer. My heart, my Star Wars heart, my heart of hearts says no. There was no dewbacks in the original New Hope. What do you think, Ray?
And see, for me, an image like this is so familiar, but that's because now we've seen it a million times. So is it my brain playing tricks on me to think, oh, sure, okay, this was probably a still from the original movie, but maybe not. Maybe this is the first time that you saw a dewback was this rendering of a card,
Yeah,
same as the first time you ever see a womp rat, right? Is card
yeah.
artwork. So your brain starts to sort of play tricks with you.
Yeah, and we know that in the re-release in the 90s when they re-released them, there were dewbacks everywhere. He added dewbacks to the movie, right? Using the CGI. He was testing the CGI for the prequels and adding all these new things to the original movies. And I know dewbacks are one of them, right? There were dewbacks everywhere, right? It's just what it was. There was the toys you could buy. Um, and this particular photo, from my recollection, my research, my understanding, is a promotional release photo. This is not from the
But
movie.
not a still from the movie.
Not a still from the movie. It's a promotional release. And you know, I mean, it looks like one, right? I mean, this is not, the dewback kind of looks too drawn, if you will, right? There's no way in 1977 they had a dewback that looked that realistic. But I just find this card fascinating because again, a kid pulls it out and says, "Whoa, what's this?" Like, is this native to Tatooine? Is this a creature that they brought in that is just native to another desert planet, or like what is going on? Like
Or did
what?
the kid even know the names of planets? I mean, like you're saying, right? People who are buying this, have they
Yeah,
even seen the movie?
yeah, yeah. No, just
Right? They're
so
just
it's just
opening it up and seeing some sort of, yeah.
yeah, it's just super fascinating to have these. these photos and just let your imagination run wild, right? And they're badass and they're cool. Oh, what's that? Oh, a super advanced soldier in full body armor with a laser rifle riding a giant lizard, right? It's the contrast. I think what makes Star Wars so captivating for so many is the contrast of the technology and the sort of natural everything else. The planets, the climates, the flora, the fauna, and to see them mix, I think is always fascinating because you look at Coruscant, right? Uh, fully encapsulated in city, but that's not what the other 10,000 planets are going to look like, right? And so of course, you're going to have these uh, huge expanses of just natural existence, and to see them two and to see the two come together, I think is really cool because it's not as sterile as all the other sci-fi coming out at the time. So I think that was cool too. All right, next card. Yes, I like this card. Amazing Robot C3PO. Got some scratches. I don't think we can send this card into PSA. Got some scratches on this card, Ray. I don't know.
It was well loved and well used, but no, I think it's, you have these almost comic book captions on these cards, and I think that's what both you and I love about this is you get the phonetic spelling of C3PO, and I sort of wondered to myself, are they doing that for the people who haven't seen it and
Right.
don't know
Yeah.
what it means, or are they doing it because it's so there is no canon, there is no whatever, that the person who made this card just said, well, this is how I want to write it because this is how I sort of see and hear it in my head.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree. It's exactly why I threw this in here. And I think it was to sort of educate people to make sure that they're calling these characters or they know, who these characters are. Or or right, is it the sort of the intern at Tops whose job it is to caption all of these cards is in a meeting and he keeps hearing C3PO being thrown out, doesn't see it on print
that's what I mean.
in
It's
the
like
movie.
the closed captioning. And
Yes,
it's
yes,
just this
yeah.
is how they got it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you remember they were working on these cards before the movie came out. So whoever's captioning probably never saw it, or maybe they got to see a screening of it,
Mm-hmm.
walked out before the credits rolled, couldn't see C3PO on the screen, and that's what they did. And everyone's like, yeah, that's C3PO. That's just how you
Yeah.
say it, right? Because remember, Luke keeps calling him 3PO the rest, for most of the movie, and as like sort of the nickname. And yeah, it's just super super interesting. Love this card. All right, and the third one, this caption, this caption again. You mentioned the comic book sayings and the
Nature
comic
of
book
them. Yeah,
approach.
that's how it feels like they were titled, right? To that same audience.
Yes, who will win the final Star War, right? And it's just so, again, knowing what we know, we're looking at this in hindsight. I get it. Um, it's a totally different experience for a kid back in the day opening this card up from a pack. But to us, it's so, I think it's so funny. It's just so funny because like to think like that battle, are they referring to Yavin? Is Yavin the final Star War? Because remember, they're in the command center right now, right? Is that the final Star War, or is it this grand like, yes, this battle might be over, but the final Star War needs, who's gonna win? And
Well, and to me, science fiction is sort of the child of fantasy, right? And sort of all of it came in some ways from Tolkien, right? And then you have either your fantasy or your sci-fi track. And in
yeah,
those, it was always about the last battle. So I think because all of this was still so young as a genre, it's like, oh, okay, so this is there've been multiple Star Wars and this is the last one. Clearly, but again, in hindsight, we know that the
yeah,
world is so much bigger than that. But people's kind of view of how just the natural progression of these things and these stories at the time was, oh, okay, if you're giving me the story at this point in time, then it's because it's the last battle.
yeah.
So
Yep, the last battle to defeat evil, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like, do you think they ever toyed with the idea of saying calling it the sequel Star Wars 2 and
Oh,
Star
for
Wars
sure.
3,
For
right?
sure. 'Cause
Um,
that's just what you did. And it's sort of brilliant in some ways that they didn't, because that laid the groundwork for
yeah,
expansion.
right. But this sort of about that parallel of World War One, World War Two, right?
Mhm.
So you have Star Wars, and then Star Wars 2, Star Wars 3, you know what I mean? Just
See,
but
that's how an adult would have titled it, but we were kids at heart. The guys, behind this
oh,
franchise
right, that's
were
good
kids
point.
at heart, so
Good
yeah.
point. We're all just children. We're all just immature
Children.
children. I love it. I love it. But yeah, this caption always just makes me giggle. Just who will win the final Star War, right? And we find out though at the end of the movie, which is interesting, is like yes, the Death Star is destroyed. Vader survives, and the Empire obviously lives on. And it's just really, really, really interesting. Um, and so quick side note, right? Quick side note. Death Star is destroyed, right? Word must have gotten out to the Empire pretty quickly that the Death Star is no longer, right?
Sure.
Whether it be Vader or whoever. You'd think they would maybe say, "Hey guys, why don't you just pack a little to-go bag and we're gonna kind of get off of Yavin and head off to wherever, eventually Hoth." Nope. What do? They take the time to line up, have some medals made, get the band together, play in the heroes, and award them
Medal
their
of
medals at
Honor.
the end.
Yeah.
Except Chewie, which we all know. Don't you think that was kind of like a little irresponsible of the Rebel Alliance? Shouldn't they have just gotten the heck out of Dodge and just maybe had the medal ceremony on the ships? Maybe, I don't know. That's just
As
me.
they're flying elsewhere. It's always been one of the strangest scenes of the entire franchise to me, so yes.
No, absolutely, absolutely. All right. Well, with that, brings us to tonight's Cantina conversation. All right, Ray, let's raise a glass.
Cheers.
Cheers, cheers. So these Cantina conversations, these are meant you're hanging out at the bar, with your friends, and just the conversations just come up. Open-ended, no agendas here. But today we're going to talk about how George Lucas laid the foundation for the entire Star Wars universe in just 2 hours, right? Start to finish. We all know that iconic opening scene. Small, tiny ship. Oh, look, spaceship. Yay, this is fun. Being fired upon and chased by this massive, massive Star Destroyer that just comes into frame slowly. And you're like, and I love how it comes in point first because you don't know how big it's going to be. And it just gets wider and wider and wider, right? And it's chasing this little teeny ship. A perfect metaphor, visualization, if you will, of the Empire and the Rebel Alliance. Just in the first 30 seconds to
And the
few
size
minutes.
discrepancy. Yeah.
You have the inside. You have the inside of the Corellian Corvette, the Tantive 4. Bright, stark white, right? Like this is a good place. We're happy here, right? This is a good place. You have the rebel soldiers lining up to defend the ship. Obviously, Ray, how do these soldiers look?
In terms of, you mean what the armor they're wearing?
No, but yeah, those awesome hats, those awesome helmets. No, but like, what's their disposition when they're lining up to kind of await what's going to happen? Do you remember? It
No.
is fear. It is anxiety. It is that oh shit moment. They might know Vader's on that Star Destroyer, right? Kind of deal. And then so what happens? They start to get boarded. The hole is cut. They're not knocking. They're gonna cut their way in, right? The Empire. They come through, and not only do they come through, they try to come through in mass, right? And the rebels open up on them. A few stormtroopers get hit. They go down, but they just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming at you, right? until eventually they rout the rebels, they turn and run, and that's that. Never in doubt, right? Never doubted for a second that the rebels were going to win that fight, right? Or that the Empire was going to win that fight. The rebels were going to lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then with all this white, the stormtroopers, everything, who comes out into the ship? But Darth Vader.
Blackest black, right? Yeah.
The blackest
Grounded
black,
in,
head
yeah.
to toe, just looking like a badass, right? There's just that polar opposite of
And with no backstory at that point either, right? You know that he's got a helmet, you know he's got the breathing that's funny, but you have absolutely no context for why.
Yep. And so, and I'm not going to recap the whole movie. Okay, you can go watch.
I was going to say, how far are you going here?
All right. So in the next scene, no, but then it shifts. It goes down to Tatooine, and so you have this hyper advanced spaceships. You go down to this planet that is a backwater planet. It's a place, yes, that is set in the. I mean, it's a long time ago, but in terms of technology, it's very futuristic. There's robots and things like that. Yet they're moisture farmers. There are people that live in this universe that are just trying to make a living, right? Like it establishes that right away, and that there are planets and there are people out there just like you and me, just trying to make ends meet, right? That's perfect. Then you have the whole empire coming down, and they go to the cantina. And what do you see in the cantina, which I thought was a difficult, I think expensive and a difficult choice for Lucas. I think he had to do it. He filled it with aliens.
Well, that's right. And including like a lot of Halloween masks, right? Like I think it was just, at the time. Yeah, no, and to sort of avoid going scene by scene here, just to put that in a larger context, I think you mentioned earlier this idea of canon, right? And in those 2 hours, canon was set in some ways, right? You have your outer rim planets, you have your inner world planets, you have your alien species, you have one band that's going to play the hit song that is, still to this day, right? The joke of the latest Lego Rebuild the Universe, right? Oh, the modal nodes, like that's the only song we all listen to. But it's, there's been an expansion or an extension of all the things that are in that first movie, but they all build off of it, right? So I always joke like every single spin-off or whatever has to have the obligatory cute droid, because that was a thing in the first 2 hours. So it became, you're always going to have your obligatory cute droid, and so on and so forth, and take whatever that thing is from the first 2 hours and expand it outwards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. And then, but also, the sort of the opposite of cute droids is they showed how brutal this galaxy can be, between Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, Han shooting first. He's a smuggler that owes money, that is being chased by other bounty hunters out there. The Obi-Wan just cutting that dude's arm off. It's just that reminder that exists, that raw. I almost said humanity. That raw.
Well, there's an underworld. Yeah,
there's an underworld, right?
There's to it. There's sort of like always on the edge of danger, I guess, is how I see a lot of it. It's like even if the danger's not present, it's right on the edges there, and you might step into it at any moment.
Yep. And then they set off on this mission, this adventure, right? And I love, I know it's so simple, but like I like rules, right? You're like me. I like rules. I like structure. I like things that fit in the box and make sense. And as soon as they sort of establish, like, all right, you get in the ship, you go off. All right, we can go to another planet. We can go to this planet. We can go to that planet. We can go to this planet, right? It was not impossible or difficult for someone to go planet to planet. Yeah, it might take a few hours, this and that, but I like that sort of opened up all these possibilities for everything, right? Hyperspace essentially is what I'm talking about here. How hyperspace, allowed the universe to expand infinitely and sort of scale, if you will, because you weren't stuck on this one planet because you had to travel. Only the government had, hyperspace. Only, rich people. No, 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 no. Han Solo, a
Available
smuggler,
to everybody.
is available to everyone. Yeah, not obviously not everyone owned a spaceship, but at the same time, like anyone can get off planet, right? And then so they're in space, and they get to the Death Star scene, and as a kid, when the Empire blew up Alderaan, I was like, whoa, like, oh man, they're bad. Like, that's not cool. You blew up her planet, man.
Like,
That
what?
stinks, right? Like, as a kid. Now as an adult, I'm like, holy shit. Like, the entire planet? Like, you just opened up and just there are millions, if not billions, of people on that planet, just like gone. And sort of the gravitas of that moment didn't sink in until I was like way older.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, as a kid, I still understood it was a big deal, right? Oh yeah, planet blows up. So it was one of those sort of actions that George Lucas puts in there that solidify the Empire as evil, and sort of showed that how sort of big the galaxy
I'm gonna say,
is.
to me, that drives home the scale of it,
Yeah, right.
which didn't then the other place where that really gets I don't know, just sort of underlined, I guess, is once you see the Senate in the prequels
Yep.
and you see how huge I mean, it's almost ad infinitum, right? The layers and layers of planets with representatives there. Um, because yes, it puts it into scope. And oh, okay, if in 1 nanosecond I can destroy an entire planet,
Yeah.
think about how large the scope of the entire empire, universe, galaxy,
Yeah.
all of it must be. Yeah, that's
Yeah. And then like you have, so they're on the Death Star, right? And you sort of throughout the movie you sort of learn, you get little tidbits of the Rebel Alliance. Who are they? Kind of what's going on. Till eventually, they escape. You see the Obi-Wan Vader
you're
confrontation.
spoiling it.
Oh, sorry. Earmuffs if you've never seen A New Hope. Um, and I love the Vader Obi-Wan sort of duel, because it who doesn't love a good tie-in, right? Who doesn't love a good tie-in? Who doesn't love when characters connect and know each other and have this background and then reconvene? And that's what the Obi-Wan Vader fight was. And even though you knew almost nothing about it, right? That sacrifice that Obi-Wan made was not lost on anybody. And then obviously when the prequels and having a scene like that allowed Lucas to come in later when the prequels were released and fill in those gaps, and it made it even more powerful, right? But within A New Hope, within that movie, it's like it just adds so much to the character level, to the sort of character connection level, if you will. I don't know how to. There's a word for it, and it's escaping me right now. But yeah, and so then they leave the Death Star, they escape, and then they get down and they find the Rebel Alliance, and they're like, "Uh-oh, we're in trouble." And so what do? They launch a bunch of ships at a last-ditch effort. Just what is it, like 3 squadrons, if that?
Wait, tiny.
Red, gold, and
Yeah.
no red and gold squadron. That's it, right? And against a moon-sized battle station, right? And again, that whole like desperation, big guy versus little guy, underdog versus evil empire, is within 15 minutes. You know the score, you know what's happening, you understand the galaxy at large, if that makes any sense. And one thing the sequels did so poorly was, besides everything, is um, is they didn't provide enough scale of what was happening with the First Order. How big is the First Order? Did they take over the galaxy? Did they
I
not? Is
disagree
that
with
like
that because of the final battle there when Lando brings everybody,
well,
but that's
right?
another conversation for another
Exactly. Yeah,
tangent.
exactly. Let's not get into that. But yeah, no, I just think and I think one of the reasons A New Hope took off the way it did was because people were just so enamored with the galaxy that was built over 2 hours. They wanted to know not just more, they wanted to know everything. They want to
Well,
know
I
everything.
think that's right, and it makes me wonder how much did Lucas know at that point? How much did he just want to explore,
Yeah.
or did he not actually have a ton, but that he did it so well, and then the fan response was so genuine and excited that that was
Yep.
when he realized that he actually had the room to fill in so much more. Yeah. So
Yeah.
either
No.
way, I mean, I think it's yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So anyway, I just think, yeah, A New Hope, um, very good movie, very good
We'll
at
see
world
it.
building. Go see it if it's out in theaters. Get it on Laserdisc and go
Yeah.
watch it. But yeah, I just think, again, I think we both agree that George Lucas he absolutely he nailed it, and I hope he makes more. Hope he makes a sequel to New Hope. I'm fingers crossed here.
I'd be very curious. I have so many questions.
Exactly, exactly. All right, well, that brings us to the end of Cantina Conversation. So now,
Cheers.
Ray,
Yes.
cheers. Oh yeah, cheers, 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 cheers. Ding. There we go. So our next segment, um, I affectionately call from the data banks of the Sky River. So you're probably wondering, what on earth is the Sky River? So for those of you who don't know, the galaxy in which Star Wars takes place is called the Sky River Galaxy. And Ray, when did you learn that fact? Because I'm going to be perfectly honest with all of you out there in the Star Wars fandom. I only discovered this maybe a month ago.
And I discovered it after you told me, so maybe 3 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
right, exactly. Yeah. Um,
So we've
and I
got the
think I
Milky
think
Way and the Sky River,
in the
and
Sky River, yeah,
never
and
the
I
twain
think
shall meet.
I
But
think Lucas named it, right. It's that whole tie-in with Skywalker and all
well,
that
but he
stuff.
was not supposed to be Skywalker. He was supposed to be Star
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 Killer.
something. Thank you.
That's why they named it
Um,
Star Killer Base and the yeah.
right. So
Uh,
it makes sense that maybe Sky River Galaxy came first.
yeah, who knows? We'll get George Lucas on our show
Yeah, we'll have him.
at some point. I'll give his people a call and he'll hop right on. No problem. But yeah, so what we do for this segment, we're going to take a look at some sort of lesser known characters, right? Some characters you might not have heard of, some characters that that just exist out there. We're going to go to Wikipedia. That's how I have to say it, right? Wikipedia.
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 That's in Sherwookie, everybody, or whatever their language is.
Shriwook.
Shriwook. There it
I think it's
is.
Shriwook. Yeah.
Okay.
But the first guy we're going to take a look at is Gold Leader himself, John Dutch Vander. So aside from being Gold Leader, he is one of the very, very few characters in Star Wars who has a name that exists in our world.
That exists in the Milky Way galaxy,
In
not
the
the Sky.
Milky Way galaxy, right?
Also Luke. I will just point out also Luke.
And Leia,
But
I suppose, right? Leia.
yeah, no, I don't think that one existed
Really?
here
He created that name for.
until she came along. No, I also
Yeah,
love
you're
that
probably right.
yeah, I also love that he's just John, right? They might as well
Yeah.
have been like, Joe Smith or whatever, and
Yeah.
here he is.
Yeah, John Vander. I love it. Right. So he's Gold Leader. And so the reason I wanted to bring up Gold Leader, and then we're going to take a look at Red Leader next, is because when you watch The New Hope, your focus is on Luke. Your focus is on the Millennium Falcon, on Darth Vader, right? Yeah, they're all buzzing in. Red Leader. This is Gold Leader. We're starting our attack run, right? All that good stuff. And it's awesome. I love it. But you never have time to sort of attach yourself to these characters. And while you lament their deaths, right? While you sort of get sad that they're getting picked off one by one, you sort of, when the Death Star explodes, that you immediately forget they all died except for Wedge and
The
Luke.
sacrifice
Right?
was worth it. Yeah.
And right. You just sort of forget. And so yeah, so like someone like John Vander, Gold Leader. So he's the leader of Gold Squadron of Squadron of Y-wings in the Rebel Alliance. And so this isn't just some pilot, right? Just some Y-wing pilot. This is like one of the best starfighter pilots probably in the galaxy. It is rising to the rank of Gold Leader in within the Rebel Alliance. And so look, I mean, if you I know we're not going to read his whole biography, but
He was in the Imperial Navy.
Yeah, Imperial Navy. Obviously, he defects, right? he uh, he escorted the fugitive Mon Mothma, right, safely to Dantooine when they first, sort of get going. The alliance to restore the Republic, would be formed there at Dantooine. Uh, and then when the Civil War begins, he fights at Scarif, right? He fights at Scarif, turns around, goes back to Yavin, lands, eats a sandwich probably, has a little space soda,
Little blue milk.
a little
Yeah.
blue milk, gets back in his Y-wing, and goes up there to face the Death Star, right? I mean, if this isn't heroism, I don't know what is. And it was all, and who takes him out in the end? Who takes out Gold Leader? But Darth Vader himself, right? And so to have this, like, this isn't some airline pilot, who's flying Air Corellia and just doing the same route
Bringing
every
Mando
day.
back and forth on the ferry
Yeah.
shuttle there. Yeah.
No. And so what I love is, like, you take a pilot like this, and when you actually sit down and, like, learn about him and talk, this was the cream of the crop. If they ever made a Top Gun, well, they probably wouldn't make it about Y-wings, would they? But you know, he'd be he'd be in the squadron, and and if they made space Top Gun, right? This guy, like, he's just, like I said, highly decorated, highly respected, and it takes Darth Vader himself to take him out, right? Just so interesting. So the next one I want to show, and I got to do some clicks here. My apologies. Is this guy right here,
Red
Mister
Squadron. Yeah.
Mister Garvin Dave. Oh, I didn't realize it was Dave.
Oh, Dave
Drees.
gets a Milky Way name too.
Yeah, like, okay, I didn't know Dave was a nickname for Garvin. You know,
Yeah, it
if,
is.
if I had a if I guess if I had a son, maybe I would
It's his middle name. Yeah.
maybe his middle name. Just like
Dubbed
just
Old
insane.
Man.
Right. Old man, which I love, right? And again, he's X-Wing pilot, right? Red Squadron, super decorated. Ace pilot from Varugency. I'm not saying that right, am I? Not even close.
Vera Johnson.
Varugency, right? And again, what the battles he's seen, right? The amount of damage he's done to the Empire over the course of his career is just, it's crazy to think about it, right?
Well, here's what I love about all this, and Wikipedia in general, and it's exactly what we were saying. You have this foundation for the galaxy. Did
Yeah.
George Lucas know all this backstory when he had these two characters get 10 minutes of screen time? Probably not, but it all gets filled in, and then it creates this richness to it that now exists and that then becomes canon and so yes, then you go back and you can rewatch these things with a deeper understanding and deeper meaning once you've started to do your research. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. And and for those you don't know, there's a deleted scene down on Yavin where Biggs and Luke are chit-chatting, right, catching up, and he comes and sort of interacts with Biggs and Luke. And I almost threw Biggs in here too, just because, again, this is these are all stars, right? This is the varsity team here. These names are known, right? I guarantee you, Garvin Drees was on a wanted poster on in certain sectors of the Empire for just the damage he wrought against the Imperial Navy, right? And it's just so interesting, and I love giving the kudos to people, to characters like this. Like, growing up in the 90s, I always say, like, they ask me who's my favorite character, I say Wedge Antilles, and they say, who? Like, you don't know Wedge Antilles, the only member of the rebellion to fight at Yavin, Hoth, and Endor? What? You don't know that? You don't know who this is, right? And I just love those sort of mid-tier characters who should have their own movie, right?
a spin-off, perhaps.
A spin-off, perhaps. Exactly. Good callback, Ray. And it's just so it just fascinates me
Well,
that
and that's exactly what adds such depth to this universe. Because
yeah,
you have your Skywalkers who everybody knows, you have your main characters, but you get these rich background stories to characters who have maybe 5 minutes on screen.
yep,
And then you dig a little deeper and you find all the connections and all the point. Oh, it's I mean, when you say Battle of Scarif and you go, oh wait, they made a movie about that 30 years later. And I finally got to see how that one ended up, right? So it's
yeah,
the stories have always been there, and now we're actually getting to see a lot of it, which is neat.
yep, and of course Garvin, Dave
Dave,
Drees. How you doing? It's Dave Drees. Good, nice to meet you. Um, Darth Vader takes him out too, right? It takes a Sith Lord
yeah,
to take Gold Leader and Red Leader
yeah.
out.
They give them a hero's ending there, but
Exactly. So awesome, awesome. All right. Well, thank you for exploring the data banks of the Sky River with me, Ray. Which we're going to move on to our final segment of the evening, which we are calling "This Is Why You're Wrong." So, Ray, you're going to tell me why you think Luke flying an X-wing for the rebellion at the Battle of Yavin is a mistake, and I'm going to tell you why you're wrong.
I know you're going to eviscerate my argument here, but this is a perfect segue. So you have these decorated battle heroes who have been in the rebellion their entire lives, right? We're calling Dave old man. I think he's probably supposed to be what, in his 50s or 60s, and he's probably been doing this since he was a teenager. And then you get this guy Luke who showed up what, a month ago, less than that, and you're going to give him, first of all, a pilot seat in an X-wing and then a leading role to actually take out the Death Star. So look, I understand we've laid the groundwork that Luke is a good pilot. He can fly through Beggar's Canyon. There's an allusion to all that he wants to be in the academy, that he wants to train, that he's good. And yes, we know obviously he has a little bit of an edge because he's force sensitive. However much he's been able to play into that. But it just has always felt very strange to me that he could come along out of nowhere and get this prime role in a battle that is the battle, right? You talked about it earlier. You've got huge empire, tiny, tiny, tiny rebellion, and they're going to lay all of the hopes, dreams, results on this newcomer. At this point, we don't know that he's Vader's son. We don't know that he has or we sort of know that he has the potential to become a Jedi, but we haven't seen that play out yet. Why is the rest of the rebellion, other than Obi-Wan, going to believe this and support this and get behind this new pilot? So there you go. Tell me I'm wrong.
All right, Ray. This is why you're wrong, and it's two words: Bail Organa.
Okay.
Bail Organa knew from the get-go that Luke Skywalker is the son of Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala, right? Helped put them in hiding, obviously helped raise Leia as his own. And what we know now. So again, if we're looking at this in a vacuum in 1977, you kind of go, right?
This is a
Right?
little sus as
Which I'll address that in a second.
yeah.
But if we look under the hood and we recognize the prequels and all of the everything else, Bail Organa, you know for a fact, sat Mon Mothma down and said, "Hey, girl, so Luke and Leia, right? This guy Luke, who's coming down now, right?
Coming
He's
out of nowhere. Yep.
coming out of nowhere. He's cool. He's with me. He is actually like I think he spilled it to Mon Mothma. He's Leia's, maybe
Brother.
not that, part, maybe not the brother sister, but he probably said he's the son of Anakin and Padme. And there's
So
good
this
in
is our
him.
shot to win.
This is our shot. If we need to fight the Force with the Force, and this needs to happen. And so Mon Mothma, just looked at Jan Dodonna, and that's how you say it, maybe, and looked at the other generals and said, "Hey, give him a ship. Get this kid a ship." And they're like, probably looked at her like, "What are you talking about?" And she probably just went, "Just do it." And she had enough clout and enough respect from everyone around her that Mon Mothma was able to get Luke into one of those ships. Now, again, wasn't maybe public, or you probably didn't see, but it was probably behind closed doors, that sort of thing. And they knew he was coming. Because again, who did Leia look to for help at the beginning of the movie?
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. So they knew coming with, like, I'm sure they got word, right? I'm sure word got to them that Obi-Wan picked up Luke Skywalker. And again, Mon Mothma was around. Mon Mothma knows the score, knows the Skywalker name. And like, what you mean? You mean these Skywalkers? Like the Skywalkers, right? And got him a ship. And now mind you, you might not
But
be
keep going.
go.
Well, so even for Luke himself, let's suppose you're right, because you're just going. I'm assuming you have no evidence that this conversation between Bail and Mon
Oh
Mothma
no,
and all this
zero.
happened.
I have zero.
Right.
Yeah,
This is
zero.
just. But all right. Let's say you're Luke, and this now happens to you. Aren't you a little surprised? Like, at what point are you then, as young Luke, saying, this feels really strange to me that they're letting me do this? Or are
I
you
think
just
no, I think they did a good job with Luke throughout the movie, building him up. Like, you know, of the Rebel Alliance, right? You know about, and then like building up as a good pilot. And again, he doesn't know why he's a good pilot. We know, yeah, obviously it's the Force and
but
everything
all
like
of a
that.
sudden you get to be in the final Star War? You're
Yeah,
just that good? I
well,
don't know.
yeah,
There's
no, absolutely, no, and
it's
yeah,
always
maybe,
read a little false to me, I
yeah.
guess.
Well, the
Both
other, but
that
I
they
think,
would give him the chance and that he would feel ready for the chance. I don't
yeah.
know.
So what's his designation? Red 5? Is that what he is? Is he Red
I think
5?
that's right. Yeah.
And so is Red 5 the real Red 5, just like sitting down on Yavin
Poor
and
Red
eating some
5.
potato chips? Like, damn it, again,
He's in the
like they didn't send me up there
cantina
at 10.
going,
Ah. But yeah, no, I just think I think you're wrong. I mean, did he get some side eyes from the other pilots? But again, the deleted scene with Biggs. Remember, Biggs also probably vouched for him. Like, this kid's a good pilot. Like, get him a ship.
up
He's a
there.
good pilot, right?
Yep.
I think it was just they're so desperate and they needed to do anything in the moment that they were, they had a spare X-wing, or they said they sent Red 5 to go grocery shopping while they were out in the mission, so he wouldn't be around. They could just take his ship. But yeah, no. So
All
I
right,
just
so
think
here's what I'll say: is I really like your imagined conversation between Bail and Mon Mothma. I
yeah.
want to read about it on Wikipedia, and then I will
All right,
believe.
fine.
Then I will agree that I am wrong and go with your take on the matter.
All right, fair enough, Ray. No, I still think you're wrong, but that's well, that's another. That's again. We will
will
have
agree
many
to
more.
disagree. Yes.
Yeah, agree to disagree. Exactly. All right. Well, that brings us to the end, Ray. The very, very end of the show. I had a blast talking about New Hope, original trilogy, taking that Wayback Machine to the 70s, the groovy 70s, man. I think I'm going to replace this with a beaded, those beaded
Well,
doorway
do we need
things,
lava lamps
some
and
lava
shag
lamps and
rugs
stuff.
and some bell bottoms? Yeah.
Well, as I say, I am wearing bell bottoms now, oddly enough, which is interesting. So, yeah, that's why it's from here up. Yep.
TMI.
So there you go. But we just want to thank everyone for joining us for another episode of The Outer Rim. I am Carbonite. With me